Hi guys, welcome to this second part series of my two-part video regarding my experience modeling and living in Singapore. So this second part is going to be about my modeling career, and before I dive into the questions, I thought I'd preface it with my modeling background. So if we were to take me back 2 to 3 years ago when I first started everything, I had actually started YouTube. And during that time, I was actually doing fashion lookbooks because I was pretty obsessed with fashion at the time. I was inspired by Jen Im. And I was doing some lookbooks, and one of my friends from high school had actually seen a lot of these lookbooks. So he got in touch with me and he asked me to model for his clothing brand. So I did. And back then I had no experience, no portfolio, so obviously he paid me in clothes. That was fair enough, and we were friends, so that was nice of him. And that was my first taste of modeling in a studio. So then after that, soon after, I got hit up by a few photographers, like portrait photographers on Instagram, and they asked me to model for their Instagram basically. So I was doing that on and off for like maybe a year or two, and then through Instagram my following kind of grew, and so some brands were reaching out to me because they saw my Instagram page and they asked me to model for their campaigns. So I did Bellroy, I did Adore Beauty and things like that. So these were e-commercial brands, and then I got flown from Melbourne to Singapore. I was there for 2 days and 2 nights, and I was flown to model for a portrait photographer and also his client, which was a fashion e-commerce brand. And so that was a pretty incredible experience. That was something that was like, wow, for me. So I saw Singapore as kind of a portal into the Asian hub. I saw that there was a market for it, and also because Singapore was a safe haven, it was a safe country. I had some friends in Singapore, and then everything else was a bonus. So the food was good. The only downfall about Singapore is it's very, very expensive. So I was lucky enough to find accommodation. I think because of COVID, I was lucky enough to find a room of my own, and it was only $800 a month, Singaporean dollars. So that wasn't too bad, because sometimes rent can be even more expensive than that. So let's dive into the questions. So the first question I had was, how did I approach agencies in Singapore? I approached them by basically going off a list of agencies that I found through Google, and I decided to ask my friend who was in the industry what he thought about some of the agencies, and he would give me feedback. So I would narrow it down, and then I only emailed the ones that I narrowed down. So I only emailed about 3 or 4, and pretty much all of them got back to me and they wanted me to sign their contract, and I just went with the one that I thought would get me the most jobs. And I was pretty lucky because that agency was actually one of the best ones in Singapore, so they got me a lot of jobs. In fact, my first job was in Taiwan, not in Singapore. So I actually got flown to Taiwan 4 days after I landed in Singapore, and I basically had this big campaign which I was probably not prepared for, to be honest, because it was quite daunting to just like land. You haven't gotten over like experiencing Singapore, and now you're experiencing Taiwan. So that was an incredible thing for me, but that is the industry. It is very hard, very fast, and very like on the go. Like you really have to be prepared for anything. So I basically packed up everything I had that when I was living in the hostel. I packed up everything and I just went to Taiwan with all my luggage. So it looked like I was crazy because I had so much stuff for like a 5-day trip. So my next question is, why modeling in Singapore? I think I already touched on that in the first question. So mainly because it was safe and it was kind of an international portal for me, like a portal into the Asian realm of modeling. And I would have to say it is definitely your best first base kind of modeling taste, because the campaigns can be big, you can go international, but there's not as many jobs. It's still limited compared to if you went to Japan or Korea, but there are a lot of e-commercial jobs. so there's always work for you regardless. So Singapore's good in that sense. So it was a first taste for me, and also because I didn't want to go somewhere like Korea or Japan because I was very insecure about my abilities as a model. So I didn't even think that they would like my look because they would look at me and they're like, she has a scar on her knee, she has this. Like, I was so scared of being like criticized. So when I chose Singapore, it was really good because they didn't care. When I was like, oh, I have a scar, they'd be like, oh, that's fine, like we'll edit it out or something like that. They were just really generous and just really nice. Like the clients were awesome. So yeah, that was the reason why I chose Singapore. What's modeling like in Asia or overseas, or in Singapore in my case? So for me, modeling was pretty nice. It was a really hard and fast industry, and you work really long hours, so the days can be really long. My longest shoot was 15 hours. I mean, for me that was good because it meant that I had work. So that was good for me because it's not a 9 to 5 job. You're not going to work every day. So if you can work one day and make it a long day, then it could be really worth it. It can get quite taxing on you physically. Mentally, it's not going to be that stimulating. It's not going to be an intellectual stimulation for you. So that's the other thing. You go into robot mode. And when you go into robot mode, it's quite difficult to be awake and be stimulated in any way. But it's still really good. It's a really fun experience, and the people you meet are pretty darn incredible. Like, a lot of the clients that I've met are so sweet and so accommodating, and they feed you really well. That's the thing about Asians, they feed you really well. So another question I get a lot is about my height, weight, and age. So I'm 24, I weigh about 45 kilograms, and I, on and off, that fluctuates, and I am 160 centimeters or 5'3". So I'm on the shorter end of the modeling spectrum. So if anything, that's actually a niche market and also an advantage in the Asian market, because they're always looking for models that can resonate with their demographic, and a lot of Asians in reality are quite short. So if you can find a model that is similar in your height, you're likely to sell your products a lot more. So that's a benefit for e-commerce. And the good thing about being short is that you don't really do many fashion things, which kind of sucks because it's not as, like, fashion is quite fun. But the thing about fashion is that it doesn't pay. So, you know, when you're doing runways, editorials, all that stuff, it doesn't pay that much compared to when you're doing commercial jobs. So for me, it was kind of good economically for me to do commercial. But it was also better for me mentally as well, because I snack a lot, so my weight always fluctuates. My experience with modeling was that it wasn't as scary or as crazy as some people might have in their experience, just because a lot of the clients I met were really lovely and they were really kind, and none of them were really mean or like harsh in terms of my appearance. So that actually helped me. So for me, modeling in Asia was a really positive experience, especially even for my height. I've gone to castings where they're like, you know, it's so rare to find a model that's your height, because we always get sent really tall models. So yeah. The other thing about modeling in Asia that I didn't touch on was that they really like the Caucasian look. So for me, I was at a disadvantage because I was Asian. So I didn't always get every job. But at the same time, it was also an advantage for me in other jobs, in other aspects. It's kind of like when one door shuts on you, another door will open. So for me, it wasn't a complete disadvantage. It was kind of like a net balance. So yeah, so don't lose hope. Don't be too put off by the height thing, and don't be too put off by like the whole race thing. Like, the fashion world is getting a bit more diverse now, so don't limit yourself, basically, is what I'm saying. So yeah, don't limit yourself, because I did that. I was very insecure. I was like, I'm Asian and I'm short, so everything, like all the odds are stacked against me. But to my surprise, I was actually pretty successful in getting a lot of jobs, and I was even working even on the last day, that on the day that I was leaving to come to Australia, I was still working. There's always a demand for every niche market that you're going to enter into. Just have faith in yourself. So that's something that I got out of it, was self-confidence. Surprisingly enough, it didn't crush my self-confidence. It actually made me more confident and more assured of myself. So that was a positive thing that I got out of modeling in Asia, actually. Favorite locations to shoot in Singapore? If you're talking about outside, not very many, because I was there during dengue fever season, so there were so many mosquitoes. The weather was hot, it was humid, I was sweating, so none of the photos that I took outside looked that good, because this was like me half the time. And then anytime I tried to like do a photo shoot where I'm trying to like block the sun, trying to look airy, like literally that was me just shading myself from the sun. None of the locations I shot outside were pleasant. But in terms of aesthetics, there is one. It was at Changi Beach Club. I think Changi Beach Club, I think that's what it's called. So that was my first ever shoot in Singapore. I got bitten by so many mosquitoes, but the video came out quite nice because it was kind of like this sunset, beachy, white bridge kind of look. So that was really pretty. Maybe if I find the video I'll insert it. But yeah, in general, my favorite place to shoot is probably in their studios. I can't deal with the heat, especially shooting outside. It was terrible. But my friend Jagan and I shot at Chinatown, and that was quite nice. I shot at Chinatown a couple of times. That was pretty fun and easy to do. What are some poses that you do as a model? Oh gosh, I'm wearing pajama pants, so I don't know if I can get up. But like literally, sometimes you're just sitting down and then you just pretend to like fix your hair, like look in different directions. One tip that I get is to not look too far away. So keep it near the photographer and don't be like looking up far away. Just keep it kind of centered, but look like you're looking away and stuff. Yeah, and then there's like the sun's in my eyes kind of pose. The jewelry, when you're doing jewelry, you want to make sure that your jaw sticks out, so you really just, ow, leg cramp. Make sure you stretch. Ow. I've got a leg cramp. Oh my god, I think I'm getting old. So yeah, just make sure you're looking in a way that kind of accentuates your jawline. So when you're doing e-commerce jobs, so we're in my pajama pants. So when you're doing e-commerce jobs, you wanna like show that you can accentuate the clothes. So for example, for this shirt, what I want to accentuate is the slit and the like balloon sleeve. So I do something like this. I don't know, I think you have to be in the studio to like do stuff. But yeah, one of the things that I try to do is I try to accentuate and make myself look tall. So I'm always like in this kind of angle where my face is smaller, my torso and my legs look longer. So I'm always accentuating it in this way. And it also helps when you're wearing heels and stuff. But yeah. Yeah, I think that's enough. I don't know what I'm doing. To be honest, modeling just comes with experience. So after a while, you kind of just get used to the flow of things. The first few photos are always awkward with any new photographer, but when you've worked with the same client and the same photographer for a while, it actually becomes quite easy. And sometimes they'll set up a mirror next to you so that you can see how you're posing and you can see whether or not what you're doing is like good or not. Okay. I don't know if that was helpful. I feel like I have to be in the studio to like get into the mood of modeling, I guess, and posing. But yeah, that kind of gives you the general idea that, you know, when you're a model, you have to think about how your face and your body's gonna look, and the defining feature is always the product. So if it's a phone, like pretend this is a phone. So when I modeled for a phone company, I always have to like make sure that I'm not covering the logo or I'm not covering anything that's important. Like if this is the whole feature, then I gotta hold it in this manner. I can't be covering this. Say if Samsung is sponsoring me, I can't cover the logo, so I just have to like pose around it, but also make it look natural. Oh dear. And then yeah, if you're modeling for clothes, you gotta watch out for the details. So this is the balloon sleeve. There's like little detailings in the button, so you just have to like make sure you accentuate it. Now I'm just being ridiculous. Gonna break it somehow. But yeah, that's something that I never picked up when I was modeling in Australia, because I was still quite a noob and I was relying on the photographers to like direct me. But once I got to Singapore, after doing a few jobs, I just all of a sudden knew how to pose better, and I learned a lot from watching other girls. So another good question I had was, how has COVID affected the modeling industry? For one, it put everything on a hold when I was in Singapore for about 2 months. 2 weeks, I wish. 2 months. So I didn't work for almost 2 months and had to make up for it in the last 2 months that I was there. So yeah, COVID's actually affected it quite a bit, but once everything kind of went back to normal and kind of opened up again, the industry is actually basically bounced back up. But the only thing is, there's no more international jobs. So like how in the beginning I got an international job in Taiwan, I was hoping that maybe I could go internationally again, but yeah, there's no jobs for you internationally. In fact, the modeling industry is really difficult to do, because you have to be physically present. The photographer has to be there to take the shots, the makeup artist has to be there to do your makeup. You have to have the stylist there. So some things that they've done is try to reduce manpower. So there's been jobs I've gone to where I've had to basically do my own makeup for, which is quite unusual actually. And then there's been jobs where you go to and they've reduced manpower, so there's no like stylist, or like the stylist will just have the clothes on the racks ready for you to put on. So it'll be prepared in advance so that she doesn't have to be there. Yeah, and everything. And everyone has to wear a mask except for the model because you're modeling. So yeah, it's been an interesting industry if you think about it. It's made us realize what's important as well. That's the other thing about the modeling or the fashion industry, is a lot of people aren't, I guess, into fast fashion as much. It's still a lucrative industry. Consumerism is always going to be up there, but it's made people, I think, rethink what's more important. And yeah, people are buying more basics now. So yeah, in terms of affecting jobs, it hasn't really affected jobs. I mean, jobs are still happening. If anything, it's actually made it better for models because you actually have more jobs. If you're in Singapore, there's probably more jobs for you because you don't have as many competition because no models are coming in. There's models that have just gone back home, like myself, so that's left more jobs open for the models back in Singapore. So yeah, it's actually not a terrible time to be a model, to be honest. The industry in Singapore, like I said, is quite hard and fast. It's very intense sometimes, but the clients really do look out for you and they're really sweet, and they will always be, you know, accommodating, and they treat you really well. So even though you're working long hours, you don't feel like you're being treated badly. You're definitely being treated really well. Everyone's really nice and encouraging to you. So I would say Singapore's a good first kind of portal into the Asian market. So what's modeling like in Singapore versus Melbourne? I think I've touched on this, but in Australia it's a lot more laid back. It's not as intense. So for Singapore it's a lot more hard and fast. Like I've said, the pace is a lot faster. Australians, I think we just have a very laid back personality, so things don't really get done that quickly. So modeling is pretty interesting in both countries. I would say there's more jobs in Singapore for myself, that is. For Melbourne, usually I'm used as like a token Asian. For us, we're very multicultural, but it would be nice to see us being a bit more receptive to Asian models being at the forefront. So yeah, I think there's still a market to be tapped into here in Melbourne. But in general, when you're modeling in Melbourne, people treat you incredibly well as well. They feed you well and they're super nice to you. So yeah, both industries are very kind to you. Okay, so that basically concludes the second half of my video. I hope you guys found it beneficial. I hope this somewhat benefits you in some way, and if you're looking for some encouragement into the modeling world, I hope that this has somehow encouraged you. If you are feeling a bit insecure about your height or things like that, just know that I too was very insecure. I have scars, I'm 160 centimeters and I don't fit the stereotypical model profile, so honestly if I can beat all those odds then you can too. So yeah, I hope that this was somewhat insightful. Thank you for tuning in and sticking throughout the whole video once again. Subscribe down below, hit the notification bell button if you like, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye!